here, Go Live Vegas Studios in the heart of Las Vegas. This show is called Full Tilt Vegas. Brett, you want to say hi? I got Brett here. Hello, Brett.
Hello, good people. Happy to be back. Happy to my good buddy Michael Lugo for holding down the fort last week. Richard, welcome back. Happy to have you back. Plenty to talk about in the world of sports. But before we get going, we're going to dive into some of Richard's expertise as he talks about normally on the show. We missed it last week, so we're going to welcome it back with open arms here, starting off today.
Okay. Also, you want to go ahead and you can get my book. You can get it on Amazon, Google. You can Google it, Kindle it. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, give us gifts, or, get it for yourself and have it on your phone. So everywhere we go, you'll have my book. It'll teach you blackjack, craps, and roulette. And that way you can memorize that and have that information in your head. If you want to know about horse racing, episode Delatory 360 Entertainment, episode 7 through 10, and number 14 and 17 are really good episodes. That's with Anthony Curtis and Rob Goldstein on poker. Okay, I guess we're going to get into it. Brett, before the show, we were talking a little bit about, Brett was talking about horses, and I think he has a couple of questions for me, Brett.
Yeah, key question for me, Richard, would be is obviously so much talk about horses being, just compared to sports, it's going to be obviously a lot harder to bet a horse than it is betting anything regarding human beings. And a lot of times when betting sports, you have different calibers of athlete, you have different calibers of team, different calibers of coaches, and those calibers often affect how you bet and often affect how you may bet the other side if you are firing money on the opponent. But obviously with horse racing, you have a field of horses, and often we see a case where certain horses may not do the exact same thing in terms of what you are trying to bet them to do. So my first question would be, Richard, when looking at claimers, allowance, and stakes horses, what is the main difference? And right off the bat, as someone who's trying to entering the field of horse racing and betting horse races, how do you differentiate that?
Okay, claimers usually there are a lot of claimers. There are a lot of claimers that are 10,000. The low one is 10 and 8. There's 12.5, and you got 16, you got 20, then you got 25, then 32, and then 40, 45. Then it goes into 65. Then you got $100,000 claimers. Now, because they're claimers, they can be claimed. Now, for what reason the trainer wants put them in a claimer, because they can be claimed out of there. It could be multiple tags for it. They throw them in like the old way. They do a computer now, but they used to throw them in the old black top hat, if you remember, in England, and pull out if there's 10 people or 3 people. They call it the shake, and they pull out, and that's who gets the horse. But claimers, you got to be real careful when you bet a 10,000, especially 8,000. Those horses, they're at the bottom, and those horses can be something can go wrong with those horses. Those horses are not expensive. Maybe even though they come from a good bloodline, they're just horses that had problems and never proved what they're worth. Especially if they come from the bloodlines all the way back. I've seen some really good claimers, $16,000 claimers. There was one. Princess Allege. I think it was Princess Allege, a $16,000 claimer. I think it had a cleft palate problem, and they fixed it, and they didn't say nothing. But I had a friend that used to work for, I guess I better not say the name because he's in enough trouble. He came back with the information. They fixed it. They did some works, and then he wanted to claim the horse. And my buddy Gary thought about it. He says, nah, it didn't matter. There was 7 claims in the force. He got claimed. He went on to go from a claimer to an allowance. Then he didn't won a stakes race. And then I think he won might have been another stake race. Then he came back into allowance. And then he finally lost. But he won like 5 in a row. So whatever was wrong with the horse, like I said, they fixed it. And he went on to be a pretty good horse. Or she went on become a pretty good horse. But yeah, the claimers, 32,000. If you're ever gonna bet, and hopefully your horse will be pretty sound, you're looking at horses probably 45, 50, 65,000, 100,000. Those horses are pretty good horses because they paid a lot for them. Those horses sometimes will go into optional claimers. In other words, there'll be allowance horses, and there'll be those claimers in there. So you'll have a chance to either claim that horse, or the ones that are the other horses are in there, the allowance, you can't claim those only because it's an optional claimer. And the other thing about that, look out when claimers come out of option. Say it was running, because I did tell you on one of my episodes, I can't remember which one it was. It might have been 1 7 through 10, but there was a horse that came out of a 32,000 optional claimer, and then he dropped into a regular 32,000 claimer. He wasn't an optional no more. He ran against better horses in the optional. So just claimers, look out for that horse because he ran against better. Now, the allowance horses, like I said, those horses, you can't claim them. You can get offers. There can be people that can offer money for those horses, and then they're sold not through the track but privately. And that's another way where you can buy a horse, an allowance horse, but not running the race. But you can do that. If anybody's interested in that, you got to get a hold of a trainer, talk to them, and the trainer has to buy it or claim it, because you cannot take the horse home as a pet. It has to stay on either the track or the trainers, wherever they're training their horses, whatever farm. So those horses, those allowance horses are better horses, and especially allowance horses when they run on the grass. Those are probably some really good horses. And a lot of times you'll see some of these horses, they'll have like front wraps, and they pick them up. You got to look for that. The thing I'm going to tell you about that is the horses that have front wraps, they actually pick them up, especially in a claimer. Sometimes some of the trainers that I know, there's probably at least 5 that I know that do wrap them. So, you might think something's wrong, but they're wrapping them so they don't get claimed. It's just like a basketball player. When you see they're either wearing shin guards or they're wearing ankle wraps, it's because they're hurt. So that's why sometimes they have wraps, but sometimes they do need them. Now, when a horse is in a claiming race and they take off the wraps and he's in a claiming race, you really better look at that horse because they took the wraps off and he can be claimed. So that's the other thing about claimers. But the allowance horses, especially that run on the grass, those are very good horses, especially the ones that run on the turf. You have a question?
No, absolutely. And I love how you differentiate the importance of turf. And grass, turf, mud, these are terms we hear often. We hear it even when it comes to tennis betting. So even in real life sports, not real life sports, as if horse racing isn't a real life sport, even in non-race track sports, I should say, that has to play into the factor as well. The surfaces, a lot to do with it there. Just the overall venue always is going to be a factor, as we'll talk about in the NBA and the NHL as well. But when it comes to racing, it's particularly interesting to me because that surface is going to have to do so much with how those horses are going to perform. And as Richard talks about, which horses individually may do better on turf compared to the mud, compared to so on and so forth. Much like certain tennis players do better on grass, some tennis players do better on clay. So it's just one of those things. But Richard, when it comes to athletes and coaches, a little easier to handicap there because we're humans. We know how to communicate with each other. Therefore, we often know, maybe not to the point we like to think that we do, but we sometimes know how to analyze each other, at least enough to get by when it comes to making that bet. Horse racing, a lot of times that process, a little bit trickier, a little bit more, little muddier sometimes, I guess you can say. And most people, when they think horse betting, they're automatically going to think the Triple Crown. So my question for you would be, if someone is betting a race for the first time, do you suggest it's just some average day at the track where they could go to, whether they're there in person or whether they go to a race book at a casino out here somewhere? Do you think it's better to just bet a random race, like a random June 3rd race, than it is one of the Triple Crown, whether it be the Preakness, the Belmont, the Kentucky Derby? Because all of those events, much in the world of sports as well, are huge social events. They're big on the social interaction. They're big on the mingling. That may get people a little bit more inclined to get out the door and place their bet than just some random race in the middle of June. So what do you suggest as an expert? Do you suggest someone makes their first horse bet on a Triple Crown race? Is it more fun that way? Or do you think it's something that you should do maybe when there's not as big of an event on that weekend?
Well, that right there, I would wouldn't tell anybody to, if they got in horse racing, those are the best horses, especially that 3-year-old crop.
Right.
Come from all over the world to race in the Kentucky Derby. Like Gary used to tell me, give me a good old-fashioned straight maiden or maiden race.
Maiden race.
Yeah, because those
which would be the first race of that horse's career, essentially, right?
The first they haven't.
First major race, yeah.
It could be the first race or the race still maiden because they haven't won
Because
yet.
they haven't won it yet.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So if you could have a horse who's is 2 years old racing in the Derby, and that could be considered their maiden race, then essentially.
That I think there was, if I can remember, I think it was like 2 years ago.
Right.
There was a horse that ran. I think he ran one, or was it 2 races? And he went to the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
That is rare. They want to season them.
Yeah.
So,
and that's
but-
why it's so interesting of the winner of just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, strike.
Yeah. It's a Rich Strike. It's so
Rich
incredible that horse wasn't even on the field the Friday night before. So it kind of
Yeah.
says it all right there, right? But I just wanted to ask because a lot of times I think people hear even sports bettors who may have travel and wander in close proximity to the race book, they hear the term maiden race a lot. So I think it's important to have that clarification because a lot of people may not know what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also maiden claimers, and then there's I just used to call them. I don't know why I've done that since I first started. I used to call them a straight maiden, but they're actually they're just a maid. They're now I can't remember, but they're maiden special weight. That's what it is. They're maiden special weight, and for some reason I used to call them straight maiden. But maiden special weight, those are better than a maiden claimer because they're either more expensive or the bloodlines because you can have a special maiden special weight, and for something happens to the horse, say he gets something happens, as I don't know, cannon bone, something goes wrong, or for some reason he doesn't come out like the owners thought.
Expect them to, right?
Yep, they'll drop them from special weight to maiden claimer. You got to look out for those horses because those horses are better. They might be a lot better than the claimers, not necessarily, but a lot of times I've seen races where maiden special weight were good enough to beat the regular claimers. So you got to look out for something like that. And I would say if you're going to start, it doesn't matter. You don't have to go to the track. It's fun to go to the track, but there's too many distractions, especially at Del Mar. But if you go to simulcast or if you go to the track, it doesn't matter. Just the first thing I would say, learn to read the form. That's the first thing you need to do is read the form. Like Brett here studies a lot of he has a lot of experience though, but he studies PPs, past performances.
Yep.
And you got to know that because you got to know where that horse has been, what the last 4 races he's done, what conditions it was. There's a lot of factors in the horse racing, especially if it was raining, muddy. They ran on the turf versus dirt. There's a lot of things you got to know. Like I said, go to Delatory 360 Entertainment and go through see episodes 7 through 10. I'll teach you everything you possibly can know. There's probably some more information I probably put in there, but most of the stuff is information. That's what you should know. And I can almost guarantee I'm gonna blow your mind. I'm gonna blow your mind. You're gonna see so much information that I talk about. You're gonna say, well, where do you get all this from? 30 years experience.
It's all in the book.
Yep. Wow.
It's in the book. And it's in the book. It's in your head. It's coming out your
Right.
mouth. It's everywhere here on Go Live Vegas.
Yeah, and the other thing about stake horses. Now, those horses, stake horses, those are some of the best horses there are for thoroughbred. But sometimes those horses go from stakes to allowance and it can go really fast, or it could be reversed. You can get a claimer, go from claimer allowance to stakes. But it's rare. It's the horses that are stake horses. Sometimes they'll run at 1 or 2 or 3 stake horses and they drop them to allowance or a cheaper stake race. Some of the big races on stake races, they're like $500,000, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million races. Now they're a lot bigger. It could be $3 million. Dubai, I think Dubai is $10 million. But these horses, the bloodlines, and then they only race them maybe every 2.5 months, 3 months, because they make sure that they're sound and they don't run them to the ground. Because why would you run a stakes horse and run him to the ground on these cheaper $50,000, $100,000 when you can just wait and make sure? Let me pick the conditions where this horse is going to go. You might even move him. You go to Kentucky. You could go to New York. California, you can move them all over. Dubai, you can move them all over because the payday is in the millions. I mean, what actually, if a horse won $1 million race, I mean, you made the money. More than likely, the horse, a 2-year-old, you might have paid $700,000. Some of them are really expensive, $2 million. But you can get a lot of these stake horses that are only, they're only $250,000, $300,000. But let's see what they're going to do, in the future, because man, they could just become like a best pal. What was that? What's her name? Alexandra. Mm-hmm. Some of them horses, they're exceptional horses. And California Chrome horses like that, they're very they're a trainer's dream.
Is that the segue for the next question? No, I guess I love how you clarify that too, Richard, because there's so much about how certain horses, like you said, are going to be that type of bettor's dream. So kind of focusing on the same theme here, but focusing on let's say something on the casino floor, in the games, with the tables and the cards. Are there certain types of, I guess you could say, variables like a claim or allowance and stakes horse that may determine how you place your bet heading into a race? Are there going to be different variables in, let's say, a game like craps or poker or blackjack that may also determine how you play your bet, or make your bet and play those odds, or is that simply going back to the understanding of true odds versus implied odds? What's the main thing to go through there in the early steps?
Okay, the thing is, I talk about on my episodes 7 through 10. When you're playing a pick 3, a pick 4, pick 5, I wouldn't play anything. I don't play anything past a pick 3. But even the doubles, I don't play a doubles unless I got a horse in the first leg, say he's, I don't know, 10-1, I think he's going to win. Then I'll play the double because it's a $2 bet. The pick 3s are $1. They used to be $3, now they're $1. If you're ever playing a pick 3, and you're looking at the first race is a lot of times the first race is a cheap claimer. And then the next race might be an allowance race. And then you might have another allowance or a claimer. So when you're playing a pick 3, not only are you looking at a claimer, then an allowance, another allowance for a pick 3, you might be finding those horses are running dirt, turf. So in the beginning, if you don't know how the track is playing, which I've always said, I think it's 50% of your bet, how the track is playing. Because if you have a track that's a holding track, and I mean really yielding heavy, you'll know by the splits, and you can learn that through my episodes. If you're picking horses that are front runner on the dirt and it's a dead track, those horses are not going to win. So you pick horses come off the pace, which Delahousie was the king at. That was way back then. And then you got the next leg of the pick 3. It's a turf race. You have to know how that turf is running. Now, a lot of times you'll see up on top, or the announcer will say the turf course is firm and the track is fast. That doesn't mean exactly what it means, especially when they say the dirt is fast. That means it's normal. You're the one that's going to have to look at the splits, the first split and the second split, 21-4, and then the next split on a 6 furlong race might be 45-3, 45-4. Those are normal splits for the California tracks. And then if you get Belmont, you got to add 1 tick. So instead of 23-4, be 24-4. You got it because those tracks are a little bit heavier because California is hotter, so the tracks are a little bit faster. But you'll learn all that in my episodes. But that pick 3, you have to understand how that track is playing. The turf, dirt. Now, if you have if you're playing one of these, we call them bull rings, the tiny tracks, especially if the turns are real tight, look for small horses, especially if they're front runners, because they'll blow the turn. If they're bigger horses that are fast, they'll blow that turn. They used to do that all the time at Fairplex. Fairplex is no longer around, but me and Gary used to do really well there because a lot of those big horses would blow the turn. But if you find a pick 3, all dirt, and you can kind of like see how the turf is running, the dirt's running. If it's fast, then just look for front runners until it changes, because it can change, especially if it goes 2 turns. The other thing about that, playing a pick 3 and you go from a claimer to allowance, you might go from claimer to allowance to stake race. So you better be really good in your handicapping. Like I said, get the form and learn to read the form. It should have it on the first page. You flip it over, it tells you how to read the form, and you really should know that because those past performances are very important that you have to know, especially if you're experienced. It'll help you a lot. You said something else about what was it? The way I gauge them in
Yeah, so in terms of like how you enter a horse race, you may be able to differentiate between the horse itself. What are you doing for a card game, or is that basically that aspect of the process completely eliminated because you're not betting a particular animal, you're not betting a jockey, you're betting odds at that point based off of the numbers you're going to be getting?
Yeah, there's a few horses at Del Mar that the favorite was the one horse, and he was running up and down, and I knew something was wrong with that horse, and I told my brother and my cousin, I'm going to scratch that one horse. He goes, how do you know? I guess because I could tell he's running up and down. The jockey's got him. He looks all fidgety. You can tell when their heads all going back and forth. The jockey's got him, and then they're running back and forth.
Right.
And here comes Trevor Denman. Ladies and gentlemen, number 1 scratch. I says, I told you guys. He goes, how do you know that? Because I experience. You guys are talking about other stuff instead of paying attention to what's going on. But it's experience. And that race just happened to be a 10-1. I think it was the number 8 horse, 10-1. And I told my brother that horse is a long shot. That horse has got a shot, especially since that favorite, because that was a good horse at 1, but he got scratched. But that 8 horse was 10-1. I told my brother Adrian, I think that horse is going to win. My brother's name is Adrian. So he bets $10. I said, bet 20. He goes, now I bet 10. And I bet 40. And the son of a bitch annihilated the field. He just on paper, looking at the form, he came out of better races, and he fit Del Mar. He fit the track. He came out the pace. I says, his closing splits the splits were fast, and he closed on them. So that's another thing you got to look at. And I teach you that all on Delatory 360 Entertainment, 7 through 10.
And to me I love that there's like a layered, like almost a process of elimination there. My final question would be for you, Richard, sticking with the ponies. What is the biggest mistake to avoid for a novice racetrack bettor? It doesn't matter if you're there live, if you're betting at a book, if you know people who do it a lot, if you don't, if you've watched it but never bet it, or even if you've never watched it along with never making a bet. What is the biggest mistake to avoid for a first-time horse bettor?
Betting your cat's name, your area code. A lot of people do
fair.
this.
Yeah.
They bet their area code. They bet because the horse's name. There's a lot of people bet a horse. I think it was called. I think his name was Vegas Vic or something like that. But a lot of people bet these horses. There was one called. I think it was called Blackjack. And people, oh, look at Blackjack Vegas. That's the horse. The horse doesn't know his name's Blackjack. People bet their area code. They bet their kid's age. That's like roulette. You know, when people walk up to a roulette table and bet their daughter's age. Oh, my daughter's 6. I'm going to pick the number 6. The ball on the wheel doesn't know your daughter's 6. It's ridiculous. That and the other thing, the biggest mistake to me is people not getting information. You need the information. Everything that you do, gambling, especially in sports betting or these games, a blackjack, you need the information before you play. That's your hard-earned dollar. Why would you go there and play something? When you go buy a house or a car, what do? You research it. You find out, the kitchen, is it bigger? How's the bathroom? Is there any mildew? You got to buy a car. You want to see if you get the spare tire. What about the bumper? Does it have back then it was an 8-track tape, but all these things you research. But when you go to Las Vegas, that stuff goes out the window, and you start throwing your money down on the table. And I don't know how to play, but I want to put my money somewhere. Well, that is the most stupidest thing I see people do.
I love it. That answered my question. No, I love it. And in many ways, sports betting is the exact same thing. Knowing when to draw that line. knowing how much is too much and even how much is too little, because sometimes that experience won't be delivered if you're not doing enough. Now, again, that's what makes it tricky between a novice bettor, an occasional bettor, or a casual bettor, and an everyday bettor. So that's where that fine line is often drawn, and it's very important to know where across that line you sit. So clearly, Richard, as you just alluded to, it's very much the same way when betting on the floor or playing on the floor or betting at the racetrack.
Right. Yep. So that's just something that we thought would be interesting. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to run a commercial here. I guess we can run them both, Aaron, mine, and Brett's. And we'll be back with Brett Stick. I thought that was funny last time I said that. His shtick.
Shtick. Good old sports betting shtick.
Yeah,
Gotta
sports
love it.
betting. So we'll be back with that, and we'll be right back. Hi, my name is Richard Delatorre. I'm the author of It's in the Book, Winning Ways. It's on Blackjack, Craps, and Roulette. And you can get it on Amazon, Google Play. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. And it teaches you the ratios and percentages of the casino, because the casino is really in charge. I put the percentages and ratios in your favor. You spend a little bit more money, but you have a better chance of winning. Doesn't mean you're going to win. No book should ever say you guarantee you're going to win. But what I did do is I cut down the ratios and percentages so you fully understand them on these 3 games. So you can go ahead and get that book. I was one of the top selling books on Amazon 2018. I was number 7. I was with Doyle Brunson, Negreanu, The Magician, John Patrick. So I was pretty good for my first book. So you can go ahead and get that book and pretty much read it till where you pretty much got it memorized. And you should be walking to casinos pretty much as an expert on these 3 games. The platform here is Go Live Vegas Studios, and my show is called Full Tilt Vegas, 6 p.m. Saturday night. I do have guests. Brett Lawson is a sports analyst. He comes on after me. Sometimes we double up. He does it on all the sports, and you can go ahead and see that. And I'll see you next Saturday or every Saturday at 6 p.m. on Full Tilt Vegas. Thank you very much.
Go Live Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
What's going on, everybody? Brett Lawson here, co-host of Full Tilt Vegas and local sports analyst. Just a quick heads up, moving forward, I will be a regular part of the show where my segment, the back end of the show, will focus on everything in the world of sports gambling. You will still have Richard's insights and expertise and everything from his book, Winning Ways, in the first part of the show, where he will dabble with table games and overall floor-related gambling, where my part of the show will focus on analyzing matchups, odds, totals, money lines, spreads, props, overall gambling, psychology, and philosophy, and just the things you need to know if you want to become a sports bettor or if you already are a sports bettor and want to sharpen your skills in that racket. So stick around. Moving forward, you will have both ends of the spectrum in the world of gambling with Richard and myself moving forward on Full Tilt Vegas. All right, keeping it rolling here, right here on Full Tilt. Great stuff from Richard there on opening segment. Happy to have him back right here on Go Live Vegas. If you don't have the app, be sure to get that app. Get our audio feed constantly. If we don't have a show running live, we have the best music of the 1980s. If you like that pop, that rock from that classic era where there are oh so many hits, check it out. We will always have that rolling when we do not have a show rolling live. And you can also find that same audio feed on Alexa, so be sure to listen to us there and watch us on all of our social media platforms. Again, that's right here on Go Live Vegas. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, they're all there. So be sure to check us out both live as well as any archived episodes you missed. They will all be available, not just for Full Tilt, but for every show and every bit of programming in the Go Live Vegas family. So obviously here we are sitting here on the aftermath of Game 1. Game 2 going down here in just a bit, so we'll be able to keep tabs on that as we get closer to tip-off. But obviously what we saw in Game 1 was really just a tale of, I guess you could say a tale of multiple different parts of the game. When you look at what Boston was able to do late compared to what Golden State was able to do early, the Celtics get it done 120 to 108. They were down in a hole quite a bit before just going off on what was a very impressive comeback to take game one in Golden State. That home field advantage isn't quite what it used to be in Oracle Arena, but it's still a pretty substantial home field advantage. And the way it's looking now, that is not going to be too much of a factor in these finals. It'll be very interesting to see how Golden State looks when they head out to Boston. So obviously a lot to break down there. Plenty to dive into as we move onward. But just really quick, a quick recap. Looking what Boston was able to do, particularly with their starters. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, the Jays. I talked about it last week on the show with Lugo, how important they were in the Eastern Conference Finals. We saw that in the final game against Miami, and so far making their presence known here in the finals against Golden State as well. Jaylen Brown, obviously the main force as of last night, or 2 nights ago, 24 points in 38 minutes, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Al Horford, the ageless wonder, continues to be the focal point of the offense and defense at this point. I know Marcus Smart is the defensive player of the year, but when you look at what Al Horford does on both sides of the ball as that veteran, he clearly is the straw that makes the straw that stirs the drink. He in 33 minutes racks up 26 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. And then Marcus Smart with 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. The starters making their presence known, especially late, particularly Jaylen Brown. We know he's always had scoring ability, but the way he is starting to put it together all in all as a player complements this team so much and shows that they can hang with not just one of the best offenses in the league right now, but one of the best offensive systems in the history of the National Basketball Association. Now, it doesn't play defense for them in terms of like being able to score. It doesn't stop other teams from scoring, but if you could score more than the other team, you're going to get the job done. However, expecting Boston to put up 120 and be able to have that type of run late in a game like we saw in Game 1 against Golden State may not be the most realistic expectation to put on them, at least on a night-by-night type of basis. However, to capture that Game 1 victory the way they did, not even needing that much from their bench with the exception of White, who was able to rack up 21, outside of that, their bench didn't do a whole lot. We talked about how Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals had the better bench. Well, it is becoming clear that Boston has the far deeper bench than Golden State. And I'm curious to see when that will be a factor in any of these respective games. Last night wasn't the case so much, though. Again, it was the star powers through the starters very much getting the job done, and that was very much present for Golden State as well. Steph Curry had a remarkable game. What he was able to do scoring, obviously, how do I put this? As I wipe up here. Man, we need to get the AC working in this venue. Steph Curry, 34 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists through 38 minutes. That's about what you need from Steph every night. The question is, will they be able to slow Boston down in return? Will Golden State's bench be able to produce? Jordan Peele, Porter now back from the injury. Gary Payton is obviously back. He was not there yesterday, but eventually at some point in the series, he is going to be in the mix. So the question really is going to be, who is going to have the more depth? Who is going to have the more depth in the entirety of this series? As of right now, it looks like Boston, but we have a lot of series left. So again, the Boston Celtics winning Game 1, 120-108, with Game 2 on the way here shortly. Golden State laying 4 tonight at home with an up and down of 215 and a half. They threw the hook on it. Doesn't really do much for me. I'll tell you right off the bat, my first play there is the under. That total's just a little too high for me. I think Golden State and Boston's defense will, especially now that they have a game under their belt, I don't think this affair will be as high scoring. I think this one will go under the total, and I think the players like Marcus Smart, Al Horford, Draymond Green, these defensive stalwarts and these veterans, I think they will very much be the main reason why this game goes below the total. And while it's a little bit more just, I don't want to say streamlined, but it's a little bit less up and down throughout the course of the contest. Boston was they get the outright win. They cover as the 4-point dog. So everything with the point spread going back to the other night doesn't have much to do with what I'm going to talk about now, because that's in the past. It's in the rearview mirror. But looking ahead, we can look at the spread for Game 2, where Golden State, again, is laying 4. My first play right off the bat, I'm not touching that spread because I think Boston can certainly cover that 4. I'm not laying the 4. I do think Golden State, though, bounces back. They get the counter punch. You have Steph Curry doing everything he needed to do offensively. Tonight, I believe Klay Thompson will do the same. He put up 15 the other night. Not bad, but I think we could get a whole lot more from Klay, and that's why my first prop of the night is Klay and Steph with a total of 4+ 3-pointers made at a price of plus 180. So it's one of those things where I think that this game will be competitive once again. I think Golden State gets the win. I think it'll be close, so I'm not laying the 4. So a lot of variables to go through here, but I think through it all, Golden State, through the Splash Brothers, is able to get it done. Give me Klay and Steph going over the 4 for the necessary threes made at a price of plus 180. That's great plus money, great value on something that I very much think can happen. I think it's very realistic. We've seen Klay Thompson in the past, both in conference finals and the NBA finals outright, excel in game 2s, going all the way back to 2015 and 2016. I think Klay makes his presence known. I actually think he scores more than Steph Curry here tonight. Both of them, along with Draymond, get a similar amount of minutes, and I think the backcourt of the Warriors is going to be the difference. But again, I think the Jays for Boston, when they're clicking, we now see how formidable they are. We saw Jaylen Brown do it last night. Tatum, rest assured, will have a big game. If Brown can complement him, we could very interestingly have a series. Now, again, this is the backcourt of the Warriors. It's different when talking about Boston in terms of positional aspects, but in terms of how they function within the system, Marcus Smart's a guard, but he doesn't have the same type of scoring ability that those two Jays do, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So I think it's ultimately going to be the 1-2 punch between Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum that very much could swing where this series goes. Because again, I just said a moment ago, the bench will have a lot to do with it. Tonight, I think we'll have a little bit more of a defensive presence. I think guys like Marcus Smart and Horford and Draymond Green could very much be the heroes of tonight, but not to the point where I think it's going to hinder the production of Klay and Steph. I think, again, Brown and Tatum will be very much there to give the Warriors problems, but tonight I think the Warriors are able to get it done. I don't think we see those ebbs and flows, volatile peaks and valleys types of runs that we've seen not just in game 1 of this series, but throughout the recent past in both the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. The Warriors came in this series far more rested. I was worried, I talked about it last week on the show, will this war of a series, this battle, this grinded out type of battle between Boston and Miami affect whatever team winds up winning? As of last night, that wasn't the case, and the team that got more rest, the Golden State Warriors, who handled the Mavericks with relative ease, at least in comparison to what the Boston Celtics had to go through, yet it was null and void. And I don't think that's going to necessarily tell the tale of the whole series, that I'll get into in a moment. But if we're talking on a game-by-game basis, we just have to look at who is scoring and who is clicking, both off the bench and in terms of those starters, and Boston was doing just that. Golden State had a lot of trouble stopping them, but they clearly weren't too bogged down by that physically intense series we saw against Miami just a week ago. So Boston's ready to go. I think Golden State's going to come back with a mean counterpunch here tonight, but not before it goes below the total of 215.5. So right off the bat, game 2, give me Golden State, a money line price. Again, I don't trust them to lay the 4. Too big of a spread. I like Boston potentially even cover that, and I'm not playing it, but I'm leaning Boston to cover the 4. I could see a 2 or 3 point game when it's all said and done here, so that's why I'm picking the Warriors with the minus 166 price on the money line, and again, going under 215.5. I already mentioned that player prop. I think Klay and Steph each go over 4 threes made. I know a lot of people that number may scare them away. Oh, 4 each of them? You're talking about 8 combined in between the two of them? You've seen the Golden State Warriors this time of year play before. They defy those conventions. They flip those elements and turn them on their head, and that's why not only are they a dynasty and one of the greatest offenses to ever do it, they find themselves right back here in the finals, and I think we're in store for a big game with those big 3, particularly the Splash Bros. So give me Golden State in terms of the game tonight. Looking at the series as a whole, this is interesting. I talk about Boston's bench. Last series, it was at a disadvantage. This week, it's at an advantage. You look at Boston's size, their length, their physicality, their intensity, the way they make it scrappy and just seem to stay in the fight to the very end. This is a team very much built to combat what the Warriors bring to the table. I don't know if they're built to beat them. That's what we'll find out. But they already got one under their belt. That shows that this Boston team is a lot more equipped than I think maybe the casual NBA fan realizes. And it's also interesting because if you look at it, it's almost a tale of two stories here, as anything is. You know, there's 2 sides to every story. But a lot of people think that Boston's being overlooked because of what they've done, and the fact that you had a Milwaukee team with an injured Chris Middleton, a Brooklyn team that was a flat-out mess, and a Miami team that dealt with multiple injuries, as I, get a little wipe there. And a Miami team that has multiple injuries, and yet a lot of people think Golden State is overvalued because Golden State has gone through a not as tough of a path as Boston did. So it's one of those things where each side is going to think the other's a little overrated. You look at the power index that ESPN put out right before game one a couple of days ago. Everyone in the kitchen sink seems to be on Boston. And I'm like, not so fast. Let's pump the brakes. This is still the Warriors we're talking about here, a team that Boston has not, until last night, faced. However, with the size, with the way they're built, they showed that this series is meant to go deep. And if it were to go the distance, it would not surprise me. I don't think this one is going any less than 6, and I would not be surprised at all if it were to go 7. Again, Boston with the physical presence, the way their all-in-all roster looks, they're 1 through 5. They're going to be able to do a lot of things that gives the Warriors gray hairs. And for that very reason, I held off going into this series on betting that series price. For example, it opened at Golden State minus 140, Boston plus 120. I like Golden State to win this series. Has nothing to do with the Celtics. If Miami won, it'd be the same thing. I think Golden State, a week ago when we were talking about the 4 remaining teams, I thought Golden State was the best one, and I thought that was the case even before that. I know on this very show, I was big on Phoenix. I was one of the first people to say they were, without question, the best team in the league, which I know, hindsight 2020, but they were. But again, I realized that going into the playoffs, this Phoenix Suns team was not the same team that we had been seeing, and this Golden State Warriors team has only gotten that much better. Lugo and I talked about it last week, how they may be the best third-quarter team we've ever seen. They've established that right off the bat, right from the get-go in this series, and I think that'll continue to be the case. I will continue to bet the Warriors in the third period all series long. I don't care where they are or how the game's looking. This is a really, really interesting game to bet in game, so bet live as it's happening, as I allude to more as we move throughout the series. But we're still early here, and because of that, I held off on voting the series price of Golden State minus 140 because with that value or that favorite money, I didn't want to fire on it. But now, with one loss under the belt heading into game 2, want to know what that series price got updated to? Boston minus 165, Golden State plus 140. By waiting one day and seeing the Warriors lose that game with at least 6 more potentially to go, right? Or at the most, I should say. With that much more to go, now I could bet Golden State, lock it in with plus money, underdog money, much greater value, making the same bet. Golden State losing the other night did not deter me from any way of thinking that they are capable of winning the series, and that's why instead of firing on them earlier at a price of minus 140, I'm now firing them with a price of plus 140. Getting much better value if that hits and they wind up winning the series. It doesn't matter how many games it goes. All I need them to do is win the series, and I'm getting a return that is that much greater simply because I waited. So that's an example of how managing risk and how being patient with certain prices, particularly series prices in the NBA, can pay dividends. Now, again, I'm also speculating because if the Warriors don't win, it doesn't matter. But if they do, I'm at least setting myself up to maximize that value just by waiting. And don't get me wrong, Boston's going to win another game here. And it's like what I talked about with Miami and Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. How Miami was going to win games on the road and vice versa. It's going to be the same thing here. Golden State, I think, picks it up tonight. I think Golden State will pick up one in the TD Garden. And I think Boston, after winning one last night in Golden State, will probably even get another one in Golden State. It could even be tonight. It could. I don't want it to be. Again, money line play on Golden State, but who knows? Golden State going down 0-2 would not be a complete and utter shock to me just because of how Boston is built and the fact that they are ready to play. But I don't think it happens. I think we're going to be in for a fun game, more defensive-oriented than a lot of people realize. And I think when it's all said and done, Golden State ekes out of here with, I'm going to say a 3-point. Let's say I'm not going to give you a final score. I'm going to say a 3-point margin of victory. So I think Boston actually covers that spread. Not playing it, but I am covering on the lean there. I know Richard likes different risk management, hedging type of plays where you can get money on both sides of a certain game. I'm not doing that just because I'm not playing Boston with the 4, but Boston plus 4 is a good play because of that line. But Golden State, I think, gets it done here. Give me Golden State again. Money line. Give me Clay and Steph one more time if you missed it. Give me them to each make plus 4 threes made. So that's all they have to do is just go over that. Plus 180. Really nice price. Kind of right on the line there. Again, the bookies have to be meticulous with these because we know how Golden State is when they get going and rolling offensively. That line is going to be a certain mark could be very easy to top. But 4 3-pointers, no matter how good of a shooter you are, if you hit over 4 3-pointers in any given night, That's kind of a special occurrence. So this one's going to be fun. You know, you think I'm sweating now, you should see me later tonight when I'm sweating this one out. We'll see if Stephen Clay could go above that mark of 4. Two of the greatest shooters of all time, one of them being the greatest shooter of all time. But again, we're looking at the number, not just the person here. So there are my plays there. You have my game 2 prop plays. You have my game 2 play on the line. I gave you a feel on the spread. Excuse me. So I won't be playing the line. I gave you a lean on the spread. My actual play is on the side with Golden State getting that money line favorite price. And again, let this one go under. I think it will. If it doesn't, it's good. I won't be mad about it because these NBA totals are so tough to call in the postseason. 215.5 is one of those ones that is right on the nose. We saw yesterday the final score, 120 to 108. It could be close. It could be a little bit south of that. I think the latter. I think the defenses on both sides really show up and make a statement. And I'm very curious to see what the final box scores will be for Al Horford and Draymond Green. Again, as I mentioned at the top of the segment, Al Horford had a very strong game 1. Green, not as much offensively. I'm curious to see if Draymond splashes a few down himself and knocks a few down from downtown to contribute to that effort that I believe will win the Warriors the game. So that's my play on it right there. I'll have stronger opinions as the series goes on. As I talked about in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, my strongest opinions generally come after the first 2 games, just because I find one game sometimes isn't enough because you just need to see a follow-up. Often when you see that follow-up, it sometimes tells the whole story. That was the case between me and Golden State and Dallas. No disrespect to Luke and company. After the first 2 games I saw Golden State, I said, nope, this isn't going to be a Phoenix situation where Dallas squeaks back into this. It's not going to happen. Golden State is the better team. So by tonight's end, if Boston takes care of business again, I think it'll start to be clear that maybe Golden State isn't what we thought, but I don't think that will be the case. And I think we'll be entering game 3 realizing we have a tough series on our hands, and whoever emerges from this one on the other side, there will be some scars, there will be some bumps and bruises, because Golden State has all the flash, but Boston has a whole heck of a lot of substance. But Golden State has just enough substance to where that flash won't, I think, get completely glossed over. And I think Boston has more flash to the point where if they get in a jam and that substance isn't working and they need to kind of pull a little finesse out of their hat, they have the ability to do that because of what the Jays and Brown and Tatum bring to the table. They add that explosive, dynamic, scoring threat that every team is going to need to counteract the Warriors, and that teams like Dallas were not able to bring to the table despite some strong pieces at their disposal. Boston has those pieces, at least I think, so will Golden State be able to keep their foot on the gas, knock down a few from downtown, and tie this thing up in the Bay Area. It'll be fun to see. And as I say all the time, the lines are that much tougher, so that I don't think the spreads as we move along here throughout the series are going to get that crazy regardless of where we are, whether it be in the Bay Area or back east. Wherever we are, these spreads are going to be tight, and these up and downs, these totals aren't going to be probably too far off from the numbers we are already seeing 2 games in. Aaron, my esteemed producer, how much time do we have? We have less than 10 minutes. All right, great. So that's actually a perfect time to take a break. We're going to take a quick break really quick, throw some commercials. We'll plug the family of networks. We'll plug our shows. We'll do something. We'll take a quick audible, and we'll touch on the hockey after because, boy, the NHL has been all over the place. We have high-scoring games. We have ass-kickings. We have fun series. We have some series that are going to look like blowouts. But either way, we're getting that much closer to the cup being hoisted. So we'll wrap things up here on Full Tilt as we dive into the Eastern and Western Conference Finals of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Stay put.
Go Live Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
Hi, my name is Richard Delatorre. I'm the author of It's in the Book, Winning Ways. It's on Blackjack, Craps, and Roulette, and you can get it on Amazon, Google Play. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, and it teaches you the ratios and percentages of the casino, because the casino is really in charge. I put the percentages and ratios in your favor. You spend a little bit more money, but you have a better chance of winning. Doesn't mean you're going to win. No book should ever say you guarantee you're going to win. But what I did do is I cut down the ratios and percentages so you fully understand them on these 3 games. So you can go ahead and get that book. I was one of the top selling books on Amazon 2018. I was number 7. I was with Doyle Brunson, Negreanu, The Magician, John Patrick. So I was pretty good for my first book. So you can go ahead and get that book and pretty much read it to where you pretty much got it memorized. And you should be walking the casino as pretty much as an expert on these 3 games. The platform here is Go Live Vegas Studios, and my show is called Full Tilt Vegas, 6 p.m. Saturday night. I do have guests. Brett Lawson is a sports analyst. He comes on after me. Sometimes we double up. He does it on all the sports, and you can go ahead and see that. And I'll see you next Saturday or every Saturday at 6 p.m. on Full Tilt Vegas. Thank you very much.
All right, keeping it rolling here on Full Tilt Vegas. We wrap things up. It's a little steamy in the studio, so sorry for the glow of the forehead. But again, plenty to talk about in the NBA. As he throws his hands up, it's true. It's hot in here. The freaking AC's at 84. It's June in Vegas. Who the fuck keeps their AC at 84? Excuse my language. Yes, full tilt. Anyway, so. Oh, it's warm in here. Anyway, so plenty to talk about in the Stanley Cup playoff. The main talking point, whether you're a hockey guy or not, why are the games so lopsided? We have the Oilers go down 4-0 the other night. We had the Rangers kick ass in their game 1 the other night against Tampa Bay, the team who everyone thought would skate away with it. What to make of it? I guess the best thing now in hockey is, simply put, talk to the people who know hockey. This is where hockey bettors the whole year like to sit back and flex, think all along they knew what they were talking about. They knew what they were looking at, and it's because in many ways they do. You talk to hockey people, this is a slog. It is a full-blown trek from start to finish, and that's why people who follow hockey tend to be more tied in to their particular sport, whether they follow the league as a whole or just a particular ball club. All these people who talk about hockey tend to do it for this very reason, and they keep tabs on it. So all the research, all the analysis, this is where you need to start picking the brains of the people who know their hockey. I have a few people that I like to text, and they're basically telling me that start looking at the totals, because now you see these high scores. People are going to be that much more tempted to bet the over. I mean, think about it. How often do you see hockey games finishing 6-2? And that's been the case. We've had a lot of blowouts. I mean, even 4-0. We've had blowouts. We've had shutouts. We've had games going to overtime and shootouts. It's been a very interesting, high-scoring, explosive type of offseason in the hockey, and I think so many people, even whether they're fans of the NHL or not, aren't really used to seeing that. You have one of the greatest goalies of his generation in Vasilevsky for Tampa Bay. He lets up 6. He gets shelled. How do you bet that moving in to the next game? Well, let's take a look at the lines really quick. Again, that Rangers team with Gerard Gallant has been on fire as of late. We saw what they did last week against Carolina right off the bat. This week we saw what they did in their opener against Tampa Bay. So something's got to give, right? I believe Tampa Bay bounces back in the game 2 spot. Rangers are plus 110 dogs. Lightning minus 130 chalk. I believe the Lightning knocked this one up. It's going to be a raucous crowd in the Garden once again. MSG was going nuts the other night, and I think that will continue to be a big element of assistance to the Raiders. I don't know how much of an advantage it will be because, again, we're not just talking about one game here. In one instance, sure, it served as an advantage last night, but that game was getting away from Tampa anyway. It was clear that was the Rangers for the taking. We'll see how they handle game 2 with what I believe will be a much closer game. Again, Tampa minus 130 favorites. The over-under is 5.5. So, again, tricky total. That's what I'm saying. Know your hockey people. Talk to them, whether they bet, whether they know people will bet. Find out for what works for you in terms of how you are going to make those bets. If you don't know what you're doing, if you do know what you're doing, pay attention to the totals. Because, again, it's going to be so easy to catch the bait and go over. I'm sorry. In a hockey total, I'm not betting over 5.5. I don't care. I don't care how many goals the Rangers scored. I don't care how many goals Tampa Bay let up. I'm not betting over 5.5 on a hockey total, especially in the Stanley Cup Finals and especially with Vasilevsky still in the post. So it's one of those tricky type of plays. keep looking at those totals. Look at your player props. You have some studs on the ice. Obviously, McDavid has put on an absolute show all throughout the playoffs. So look at the key names, look at the key goalies, and look at those totals, because those totals will play tricks on you. We look at tomorrow with Game 2 in the between the Avalanche and the Oilers. Same price. Avalanche minus 130. Edmonton coming back as a plus 110 dog. What's the up and down? The up and down appears to be 7. So there you go. It continues to get higher and higher and higher. And that's why I just said right from the get-go as we wrap things up here on the show, pay attention to those totals. Now, next week, we will have a hockey handicapper. We've had some scheduling issues in the past couple of weeks just with like recordings and all that. So that's the reason why we haven't been able to have her on. She's really tied in both in the world of sports betting and in the world particularly of NHL betting. So she'll really be able to put her thumb down on the matchup. We'll have that much more known a week from now in terms of who will be going to the Stanley Cup Finals. At least we very well could between these two teams out of the West and the East respectively. But again, count on those totals for those final scores to go below that. Don't let the 4-0, 6-2 finals in games 1 and 2 respectively scare you too much. I think we'll see some fun hockey. We'll see some scoring. We'll see some offensive output, and we'll see goalies struggle. You could see all that and still have a final score of 3-2 or even 2-1. I think we'll return to what we normally see in the Stanley Cup playoffs here over the next few days. But the best way to gauge that is to keep tracking those totals, because if we check back in a week from now and those totals are still high, what's that going to mean? That means, well, the games are continuously going to be high scoring throughout these next few days. So if that's the case, hey, I'm all for it. But at the same time, you better change your betting habits pretty quick. So clock will be ticking, pressure will be mounting. We'll see. Game 2 tonight will tell a lot how Tampa Bay bounces back against Gallant and company. Obviously, those Rangers red hot going back to their last series. So plenty to talk about the ice. We'll get into more on the Stanley Cup analysis next week. We'll have a lot to recap in the NBA as we continue to push through the finals here. So find it all right here. Go Live Vegas, Full Tilt. Richard, great stuff. Thank you for the expertise on the start of the show. I apologize for the perspiration, but hey, it's Vegas in the summer. What are you going to do, right? But hey, good luck to you guys on your bets. Enjoy the action tonight. Enjoy the action the rest of the weekend. Have yourself a great weekend and a great week, and we'll catch you here, same time, same place, next week when we are back in action live with Richard and myself here on Full Tilt Vegas. Take care, y'all.